All right, if I can have everybody's attention, we're gonna get started. Okay, so it's a little after 12:30. I want to welcome everybody to the special town meeting warrant review. This is so there's a total of 9 articles, and I think a lot of them are things that we're all fully aware of. In fact, one of them is an article at the end that was already talked about at the annual town meeting. There is just one capital item in the list. I did provide a copy of the warrant and the advisory committee's recommendations as well on the side there, in case you haven't read them. So you can grab one if you'd like. I have three documents that I'm going to refer to today, 2 of which are already out there, so you'll have them. But I do have the actual motions too, so but I can refer to those because some of them actually have numbers in them. So for some of the articles, particularly the capital items that we want to refer to as well. So, what do you think? So the 2 documents that you have out there are the actual warrant itself, and the second is the advisory committee recommendations. So that's what they're going to be presenting on the stage on Monday night. So just for reference purposes, the special town meeting is scheduled for 7:30 on January 30th, which is the upcoming Monday night. So I hope everybody who's listening on live on television cable is able to attend, or if of course any of you are here tonight this afternoon to listen as well, to attend as well. So there is going to be one presentation of this associated with this discussion today. That's going to be for Article 9. That's the billboard article. So and I'll introduce those folks at that point. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so Article 1 is a relatively simple article. This was something that we originally had on for the warrant for consideration at the annual town meeting, but we had to take a step back because one of the things that we failed to do was to actually do a planning board hearing, because this does impact the planning board articles, because it's referred to throughout the bylaws as the term selectmen, which is the opportunity to change it to a select board, which is actually the more common name that is given to the Board of Selectmen in this day and age. So obviously it takes it more of a gender neutral approach. So you'll see that this item here is on the warrant for consideration at this meeting instead of the annual, for that reason. The last annual, I should say, because because we did cover all the hearing pieces this time, so it's actually in good shape. So we shouldn't have too many questions about that. The second one is to rename the booth playing field at actually Field 1 to Bayuk Field, which is being proposed by the Recreation Committee. We have a new bylaw, or actually a policy and procedure in the town that's a selectman policy procedure that indicates that if you do change the name of a facility, that you has to go to town meeting for final approval before it gets instituted. We can establish, and number 3 is the article to establish, readopt the OPEB trust. The reason we're doing this is we're not making any significant changes to the OPEB trust. In fact, it's doing very, very well. The issue here is that back in 2016, 17, if I'm not
16, Acts of 16. Yeah.
Acts of 16. And George can speak to this better than I can. We actually had it, Randy Scollins actually had this on his agenda of things to do before he left, and then the town meeting never came before he left. So, and then it didn't make our radar screen until recently, so we weren't aware that he was going to raise this until now. So that's why it's appearing now. But this simply is a case where and Frank and I were talking about this very point yesterday. The state actually gave us an expanded list of places where we can invest the money in the OPEB trust. That was not something that was available prior to 2016. So we adopted under the old rules. These are the new rules that are in place as we speak now. So no significant change other than the fact that it does allow. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, John.
Why do we care?
Well, because you can't, if you're limited in terms of where you can invest the money, you may not be able to get as good a return on the investments. So this actually expands the list of places where we can invest the money now.
There's more control for the town,
And the
financial people. as to
Right, and the investment tools, So
Thank
if
you for
you,
the questions, Bill.
yeah, if you do have a question, you may want to come to the podium. Okay, so just so the question was, and I'll just repeat it for everybody, so everybody here, that the question was, why should we care about that? And the answer to that is that it just provides a greater array of tools for investments that gives the people who the professional investors can put the money so that it gets a better return for the town.
In fact, this was suggested to us by the company that's doing the investing, Bartholomew. They were saying, look, we'd love to be able to invest in these other vehicles, but you never adopted the law that allows us to do that, so we're hamstrung. So they said, if you can readopt it, we can make your portfolio a bit more diverse.
Other than that, it doesn't change anything else to the OPEB trust or the intent or whatever it's supposed to be done. Yes, Bob?
Quick question, how is the fund doing?
How is the fund doing? Okay, so I'll let George speak to that.
Right now, there's about 12 point, I'm a little off here because I don't have it committed to memory, about 12.5 million, give or take 100,000 or so, that's in there. It's, even with the drop, the obvious drop on Wall Street and what have you, the last thing, and everybody losing money, I think at its high, it was like about 13.5 million. Right. So we've done very well over the last, since 2012, putting the money away. Again, it'll fluctuate up and down, but we're doing well in the environment that we're in.
And we're supposed to do another evaluation of that when?
The OPEB trust, I think what Bill is talking about, it has an actuarial study done every 2 to 3 years. I think the next one is due at the end of FY23, which is this year.
This fiscal year.
Yes.
So, which will include the investment of the additional money we'll get to in the next article, which was a makeup payment for fiscal 22. And then fiscal 23 actually includes the money that we included in the budget so it will be up to date at that point in time. So we haven't missed, effectively, it won't have missed any payments at all.
As of this town meeting.
As of this town meeting. As of this town meeting. So that's important to remember because a lot of cities and towns didn't do that. We committed to the fact that we were going to go back and put the money in when we could, and now we're in a better position to do that. So now we're back on schedule, and we'll continue to put the money in every year after that, to the extent that we can, of course. So the next article is to do just that, is to set aside our scheduled payment, which is close to, it was a little over $1 million, and that includes commitments from the town as well as from the Water and Sewer Fund. So that brings the commitment to about $1.1 million that we'll be spending on that fund for this. That's for FY22. FY23 already has the money built into this current budget. Stabilization Fund. That's the town's general stabilization fund, and the recommendation on that is for a contribution of, is it, how much, I forget how much that was for now.
I have the, hang on a second.
It's over right here. Hold on. It's actually, yeah, it's a sum of $200,000 that we're looking to transfer from free cash into this town's general stabilization fund. Reason we're doing that is to keep pace with the requirements that we have in our town's policies, so that we're consistently having the amount of money, the proper amount of money in the budget, in the stabilization fund that's consistent with the town's financial policies. So, so a contribution of $200,000 from free cash will go into the town's general stabilization account. All right, moving right along. Number 6, the transfer for fire stabilization. So this is a new fund that was established at the last annual town meeting, where we now have a new program in place. The fire department actually has a new program in place where they repair vehicles from other towns as well as their own. And the money that we receive from that has to go into a separate stabilization account as required by the state DOR, the Department of Revenue rules. So we have, by our actual auditor, recommended that we establish this article, which we did at the annual town meeting. And now this is an opportunity where we're going to transfer any money out of the account back into the fire department for wages to help pay for the person who does the actual maintenance of the vehicles. Okay? And we had another conversation about that yesterday as well, and Frank raised a very interesting question, which we did review with town council, and we were able to confirm the fact that it's entirely appropriate action that's being proposed. Let's move on to Article 7, which is the CIP budget. So we have several items here. Now, you don't see the actual numbers here because the actual motion that's proposed carries the actual numbers in them. And the reason is because if something might change up to the last minute, we're able to do that without jeopardizing the article itself. And that's entirely allowed in terms of procedure. So there are actually a total of 4 different payments that are going to be made for capital items. One is to replace a staff vehicle for the fire department. The amount is for $75,150. The fire department also has requested, this is really more building maintenance, if anything, or the fire department, or the public safety building, is to replace the garage doors on the building because they're actually failing at this point, strangely enough. But that building, believe it or not, is actually 15 years old now, as of this year, which is extraordinary. It looks like it's still new compared to most places that I've seen. So they actually do a great job of maintaining stuff. 3 is the laundry building demolition. So we did actually appropriate money at the annual town meeting, but then we went and we actually went out and got ready to do the work, and then the prices went up rather significantly during the past year. Cost of fuel and the cost of disposal got very out of control, actually, in many ways. So we're going to be adding an additional $200,000 to that amount available. So total, we do have bids locked in place that are available to us for doing that work, and that's an important thing. I know that a lot of seniors are I'm anxious to see that building come down, because that's considered one of the potential sites for a community center in the future. So this will be the important first step in that process, is to take that building down, and so we have a total of $350,000 set aside for that effort. Interesting to note, too, that we picked up about $50,000 from the state on that, as well as we contributed $100,000 of our own money to help get that work done. So this will be another $200,000 on top of that. The next item is to replace the tasers for the police department. This was one that came to our attention rather late in the process this year. What happened was that we actually have insurance coverage for the police department for using tasers, and when they apply the taser itself, there's an insurance policy in case somebody actually ever sues the town for using those tasers. And what happened was that the insurance company said, well, we won't actually insure those items anymore if they're older than 5 years. And so this year they're actually older than 5 years, so we have to replace them. And so the chief is taking progressive steps to get this done ASAP. He's locked into a 5-year contract that we'll have to pay $50,000 a year for the next 5 years. We're even exploring the possibility that we may actually pay for it all up at once if we're able to in next fiscal year. I won't be here to see that happen, but my replacement may very well want to do that just to get that payment off the books completely and just have it paid for. But it is about a $50,000 a year commitment towards paying it. And the funding for all 4 items are $337,844 from free cash, and the ambulance fund is $75,150. All right. That's Article 7. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just a little clarification.
Sure.
I don't know if everybody knows what free cash is.
Sure.
It sounds like manna from heaven, but it isn't.
Right. Well, we sometimes view it that way, so that's a fair point, Bob. So free cash, for everybody's edification, is nothing as another term for what's left at the end of the year. So it's otherwise known as fund balance. So if for instance, at the end of a fiscal year, so the last fiscal year that we closed out was fiscal '22, we have received notification from the state that when we actually we had money in excess of what we estimated to go into the budget from all of our local estimates, all local receipts, and all our local all the money that came into the town, taxes, et cetera. And then at the end, when we closed out the budget, and we had additional revenue available as well, we were able to put that money together and then establish a new free cash position, which was in excess of $5 million this year. 5.2 million. So it's actually one of the better free cash positions we've had in a while. So that's considering the fact the past 3 years were done during COVID effectively. So this was actually a good year for us in that respect. So we're in a better position to address some of the things as we need going forward because of that.
The free in that terminology is necessary, that's the thing that throws everybody off.
Right.
The free actually means free of obligation, meaning that's not something that we've already slated. It's not backing up, like we have a payment going out over here and we were using this money for it. It's free of any obligation and it's there. It's above and beyond. If we were a private company, it would have been your profit for the year.
Right. So that's all it is. Yes?
Can you put that aside and put that towards the senior center?
Well, so what we do is we sometimes will use some of that money for that purpose, and in fact, we have done that in other cases, but we don't, you notice we put money into a stabilization account too, which we typically don't use that for that purpose, but we do put money into a capital stabilization account, which we have talked about. So we're looking to try and maybe reestablish contributions to that fund for that type of purpose. But what is interesting about your question is the fact that we were just having this conversation 2 days ago, that the town's pension liability, right, which is one of the biggest obligations we have other than general debt, will be fully for the outstanding debt on the pension liability will be paid in 2029, FY 2029. So that, and we're going into fiscal '24. So that means we're 5 years away from paying that debt obligation off. So that's a significant milestone for the community. So that means that'll free up several $1 million in the town's budget that we no longer have to make that obligatory type of payment. So that puts us in a really good position. That, coupled with the fact that we're spending over $1 million a year towards the OPEB liability, that's supposed to be paid off we think in 2031. So between the two of them, we should be in a pretty good position to actually look at some very serious contributions towards new facilities. But I've said to folks, and I want to say it again today, we should be planning for that day now, which includes things that you're mentioning, a senior center type project or a community center project. We also have the school, the Taylor School, that's another consideration that's coming up. And of course DPW, which we'll get to in the next article. But I do think that these are things that we should be planning for now so that we're ready to deal with those issues when the funds become available. Because the last thing you want to do is be in a position where you have money available to do things, and the last thing you want to do is actually go out and do a debt exclusion, what's going to be a 2.5 override, if we don't have to do that. So this would be a case where you wouldn't have to do that with the new funds becoming available in a few years. And that's a relatively short window of time, so I think now's the time to have those conversations. Okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next article, which is Article 8. And I'm going to turn this over to Chris in a second, but essentially what this is to secure funding for plans that will, for the DPW building and site renovation project. We're trying to renovate the existing DPW facility, not necessarily build a new one, but renovate the existing one and add in some additional space onto the buildings to help bring it up to today's standards. To build a new facility would be significantly more than what we're talking about here, but this is just for the plans, and we're looking for an $800,000 contribution to help pay for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Gallagher, who is the DPW director, and he can talk a little bit more about the project itself. Chris?
Sure. So we had last year going through CIP, we applied for, requested $150,000 for an assessment, a feasibility study on the existing DPW garage and site. We've been working with an engineering firm, architecture firm, to work through that process. They did an assessment on our current operation, how many pieces of equipment we have, how many staff we have. They reviewed the existing building, not only for size requirements, but condition of the building, and came forward initially with a very large number, not only for design costs, but future construction as well, in the close to $20 million range. Working with the permanent building committee, we pulled that back a little bit as to what we thought was manageable for the town, not only from what would get supported, but financially, what we could move forward through the process with certain debt coming off the books in the next couple of years. So we then move forward with a downsized design project. We're looking at an expansion of the existing garage. What the initial assessment showed was that we were looking at needing double the space of what we currently have to meet the needs of what we're currently doing, the number of vehicles that we maintain, the number of vehicles that we store inside, the staff that we have. So we're looking at adding an expansion to the existing garage. That would include 4 or 5 bays for the mechanics, which would all be new, up to code. They would have hose reels, they would have bulk storage for oil. We would have a parts room, a tire room. Currently, everything's kind of spread out. We have an existing Conex box that leaks with parts, has a compressor in it that's all stored outside. So we would bring all that stuff inside into the new space. We're also required to have an interior wash bay connected to the sewer system per our EPA and DEP stormwater permits. So that would be part of this expansion. One of the bays would actually include a wash bay so that we can wash those vehicles properly inside, connected to sewer, versus outside over a storm drain that runs into a drainage ditch and then the wetlands. So that would be a significant upgrade for the site as well. On top of adding the building itself, we will also be looking at redoing the site itself. We currently have the only fueling system in Foxborough for the town is on that property. The system is 30 years old. It's an underground storage tank system, which requires by state either insurance or significant financial backing from the town in case something happens with those tanks. Due to their age, they're not able to be insured. So the town has supplied paperwork that if something goes wrong, we are liable for up to $1 million for any contamination that may happen with those tanks. So the new system would be an above ground tank system. We have issues with the fuel dispensers right now. They are going down the diesel more than the gas, but they go down on a regular basis. And then fire department, school buses end up at the Shell station on Commercial Street by Honeydew there. So that would be a significant upgrade. That piece of the project is about $500,000 when that construction moves forward. So we're looking at, like Bill said, we're asking for $800,000 to do this design work. The intention would be that we would have bid documents in hand by the fall. If the funding would be available, we would look at special town meeting next fall or winter, whenever it happens to be, to move that construction project forward. On top of that, we're also looking at renovating the existing building. There are solar panels on it that are about 15 years old that need to be removed. They've been on fire twice since they were installed. The second time we left them disconnected, didn't feel it was a worthy investment to put them back on and redo that work. So we remove those. The roof leaks in a variety of spaces. So once we remove the solar panels, we would re-roof that existing building, and as well as doing something with the concrete block. It's a cinder block building. Do something where the block itself needs to be repointed, regrouted in a few places, and then do a paint job on the building itself to seal the exterior of the building, make it watertight again, so that we can continue to use that existing building for operation use.
And put a name on it, by the way.
Yeah.
We need a name up front, 'cause people drive it, what is that? And it's like, so anyways, that's good.
So that's kind of the basis of where we are, where we've been, and where we're looking to go.
Great. Questions?
Yeah,
Jack, can you come up would you mind, please? I'm sorry to make it, but people we're doing this on camera, live camera, so I want to, if you don't mind. We don't have a roving microphone today, I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I'm curious. You started the discussion by saying the initial plan, if I'll call it that, was approaching $20 million. And when I see the proposal here, it looks like you're expecting something on the order of $8 million. What did you give up?
So we initially had 4 options proposed to us by the engineering firm. One was to knock down the existing building and build all new construction for the space needs that are required to meet today's standard of our operation. One of the other options was to build half new, build the expansion, and fully renovate the existing building. The existing building has no bathroom on the first floor. The upstairs, there's a very small locker room for the field staff. There are 2 toilets in the upstairs of that building for a staff of close to 20. The lunchroom has been pieced together over the years, and has an old stove that's sitting there, but has not been connected for 15 years and really just serves as a countertop at the moment. The office spaces that are used by the supervisors that function out of that space, there's no privacy if they're to meet with staff one-on-one. So the mechanics space, which is really the expansion that we're looking to do, would move the mechanics out of their existing space into the new building, which would give them up-to-date facilities. But the renovation of the existing building is what we're giving up. So we're taking that out of the engineering hands from the architects and the engineering firm that we're using. We're going to bring some of that work in-house using our central maintenance division, using Tony and Carl. We're going to get pricing on the roofing. We're going to get pricing on the exterior siding. And then we're going to work on renovating that building, as we can over the next few years, kind of internally, without paying an additional $800,000 to an engineering firm, architecture firm to do that work. So really what we're looking at is, you're right, $8 to $10 million, depending on when we do it. The estimation that we have at this point is, with some contingencies, significant contingencies, is around $11 million for that expansion of the building.
That's a building that should have been renovated 25 years ago, so I don't have that.
So the comment was that it's a building that should have been built 25, it should have been renovated 25 years ago, and I don't think anybody here disagrees with that. It just, that we had to start somewhere with the other
Mm-hmm.
renovations. They were done. Now they're next in line, and then we're trying to finish the other 2, which was the community center projects and the Taylor School. The Taylor School has been submitted to SBA, the School Building Assistance Bureau, for consideration, but they held back on that project for this year. So we may not see that come back up for a little while yet, because they viewed it as being a project that was needed, but not more needed than, say, other communities that have much more significant needs. So we've done a good job of maintaining the building, but it doesn't meet today's educational standards, so that's why it's on the list for that reason. The community center project, most of you know what that is. It's one that it's a project which I think is needed by the town, no question about it, because we do need recreation and council. Our council on aging needs are growing leaps and bounds, thanks to Mark Craig and his team down there. They're doing a terrific job of getting folks the programs that they need, which is really important. So, but their success has sort of outlived their facilities because of that. So we're in that kind of a situation. Plus now he has recreation under his shingle as well. So and they have very few indoor facilities, which you wouldn't think that would be a problem until we had something like COVID happen and the schools were shut down. So a lot of our programs are run out of the schools, and when they're shut down, you have very few indoor programs. So that's why it's important to have your own facilities for those kind of situations. So other questions, comments about Article 8? Yeah. You want to?
Maybe,
I'll repeat it for you. How's that?
no.
Okay.
Did we get I don't know how to say it. Did we get a figure on the building that we have now, the senior center?
There isn't an up-to-date figure right now. There's only estimates, but, and I don't know if, Mark, can you speak to that at all? Can you address it? You know anything new? So the question, let me just repeat the question. The question was, do we have an up-to-date figure on on the community center, and the answer is no, because prices have gone up rather significantly in the past year.
No, certainly in regards to this topic, it's probably a no, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mark will actually try and update, get as much information he can out, so. All right? You're welcome. And so, so I'm going to turn to Article 9 at this point, and I'm going to look to Frank Spillane, who represents the petitioner in this case. So, so I'll kick it over to you, and you can introduce your panel, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Attorney Frank Spillane here, Foxborough, Mass. With me is Robert Burr, Attorney Robert Burr of Canton, and Stephen Ross of American Outdoor Advertising. This article is a citizen's petition that was brought forward, it was started by the Rounds family, and we got over 160 people to sign the petition, so we were able to get it on the warrant. As I think many of you know, there was a similar article on the May annual town meeting. This has been changed from that in a number of respects. I'd just like to go through the history of that first article. When the Rounds approached me with American Outdoor Advertising about getting a article on the warrant, I knew that the town of Foxborough was interested also in possibly putting advertising on Route 95 on the DPW site. So we approached the town with that, telling them that we were going to come forward, and if they wanted to have input on how that was written, that article. That article was written to allow a billboard sign on the DPW site on Elm Street. If that wasn't a consideration, we would have written it differently, but we wanted to work with the town at that time to come forward with something that could benefit the town and also hopefully benefit the Rounds. It failed in the annual town meeting in May. From my opinion, one of the most significant issues that were brought up was the Elm Street site. So we've rewritten it, and the new amendment to the sign bylaw eliminates Elm Street. So no billboard can be located on Elm Street. We've also increased the distance from residential units. Under the article that was at the annual, the distance was 300 feet between the billboard and an existing residential unit. We've increased it to 1,000 feet on the same side of Route 95 and 500 feet from an existing residential unit on the opposite side of Interstate 95. We also added item number 7, which is the wording that's in the Massachusetts regulations, which requires 2 separate business, industries, or commercial activities must be conducted within 500 feet of the billboard. So when you go in front of the state to get approval, that is a restriction you have to meet also. And that was one of the also limiting factors with which the billboard on Elm Street could be located, but it also reduces where billboards can go within the town of Foxborough under its own bylaws. We added that. So right now, there's an area along 95, approximately 1,800 feet in length, within which a billboard could be located. In theory, up to 2 billboards could be located there, because billboards have to be 1,500 feet apart. So in theory, 2 could go on each end. However, because of wetlands and other issues, and the hope that the Rounds will be able to get a billboard, we realistically think only 1 can go in there at this time. So we feel that these changes, specifically the elimination of Elm Street as a possible site, and also distances from residential units, really narrows it down. And again, the billboard won't be facing any residential units per se. They'll be facing the highway. So So we don't think you'll be able to really see it at all from any residential units. Again,
just-
the
just a-
advisory committee,
Just one question, Frank, is this going to be a one-sided or a two-sided billboard, do we know that?
well, at this time, we anticipate it'll be a two-sided billboard.
Okay, thank you.
One, it's considered one structure with two sides.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Good question. The advisory committee unanimously approved it for the May, and they also unanimously approved it for this special town meeting because of the benefits that it provides the town revenue, and it really doesn't cost anything to the town. At this time, if it's all right with Bill, Steve Ross would like to do a little presentation. Do you want to go through the presentation at this time?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for allowing us to present this billboard project, which will be up on the screen. As you can see, we talk about revenue generation as well as public service messaging from this. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we go along. So the benefits to Foxborough are stated as a new revenue generation stream. You're able to promote the town of Foxborough and business opportunities. There's guaranteed community messaging, whether it be health, safety, awareness, whatever the town feels is most appropriate and topical. There are no public resources required. It can help to drive economic growth in the town, and also can be used for Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts. As far as Amber Alerts, we partner up with the FBI, so whenever there's a situation in this area, they automatically take over and get time to get the messaging out. As far as public messaging, that will be up to the town, whatever is pertinent and is such as Foxborough. It's a great place to live and work. You can drive economic growth by having this on 95 and having surrounding communities and traffic see what Foxborough can offer. We are offering a community host agreement. It would be $25,000 per digital face. As discussed, we're looking for a back-to-back, so two faces. That'd be $50,000 annually. The payments are to go along with the term of the lease, which is 20 years. So that would mean total payments for two digital faces to Foxborough would be $1 million. There's also, as we discussed, a guaranteed public service time of 6 hours per digital face per month, what comes out to be 4,320 messages per month. Each message is 10 seconds long, and that's mandated by the state of Massachusetts. I heard you discuss the senior center or community center. These are things that can absolutely be put up there to bring awareness. Another benefit of this is there's no taxpayer expense. There's no public resources utilized, no police, no fire, no ambulatory. There's nothing to encumber school buses or schools, no water or sewer utilized. Bob, would you like to talk about this?
These next slides we put in for the advisory committee to show the comparison from a tax standpoint. This happens to be the Rounds property on Springbrook Road. Currently, they pay approximately $10,000 per year in property taxes, and as Steve said in the previous slide, there are no additional public service costs associated with these billboards. But when you add in the anticipated grant revenue to the town, it's approximately $60,000 per year that this property will be contributing, both directly through taxes and indirectly by having this sign on their property generating the grant money to the town. So if you look at the $60,000 and compare it to other community properties, we took a look at a couple. Right now, the McDonald's on North Street, which incidentally has the first billboard, according to Mr. Spillane, in the state of Massachusetts behind it, generates approximately $20,000 per year in property taxes. Now, they may generate additional taxes because it's a food eatery, and the town may glean additional revenue from that, but the property taxes are $20,000. And then also, one of the office buildings at Patriot Place generates taxes currently at $60,000 according to public record. Many of the buildings over at Patriot Place are under one tax bracket. This happens to be one that is separated out. So we just wanted to show that as a comparison of property that generates a little bit of taxes, but could actually generate comparatively more revenue to the town without additional services.
So the revenue will go into the general fund and can be utilized for whatever the town deems is important. Additional police, additional fire. I know at the last town meeting we attended, new sidewalks were a big topic. And at $50,000 a year, you could fund about 1,200 feet of new sidewalks every year. Additional services and activities for the senior center. 71 new laptops for students every year at an average cost of $700. And of course, funding for school sports and clubs. So this is the map of Foxborough. It's a little bit large. If it going from, I guess, southwest to northeast is 95. The blue area is industrial. The area that we are talking about is between Central and Cohasset. And if you look at all the regulations and spacing that we're proposing and that also the state mandates, it limits the locations where a billboard could be placed to about 5 different properties. The location we are talking about is 1 Springbrook Road. The Rounds own that. I don't know if you can see clearly. We're looking at the top portion. There's a black V. That would be where the double-sided billboard would be located. And it would be facing I-95 North and I-95 South. Here's an aerial view showing 500-foot spacing from any residential dwelling across from 95. Here's 1,000-foot spacing from any residential on the same side. And as stated earlier, there's been over 150 residents that have already signed the citizens' petition, and that's why it will be on the agenda for Monday evening. We talked about Amber Alerts. Here's an example of one. I think probably a couple months ago you may have heard of the Silver Alert, where 2 elderly Massachusetts people got lost and ended up in Connecticut, out of gas on the side of a road. We would also utilize this for situations like that. So Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts. And do you know Foxborough's not all football? Oh, look, another event at the senior center. You guys are popular. So recap, new revenue stream, $1 million for double-sided at $50,000 a year, guaranteed public service messages, and no cost to Foxborough. Let's go Warriors.
Great, thank you. All right, anything else to offer at this point? You good?
No.
Okay, great.
No, thank you.
All right, any questions?
Can we make a comment?
Sure, yeah.
I know Mr. Spillane and Mr. Berg know me. I'm Mark Powers. I live over on Prospect Street. And when you hear no cost, you know, no cost monetarily. But what's it doing to our community? These signs are going to be, according to Mr. Burr, on 90-foot poles, and they go up over 10 feet. So they'll be 100 feet up in the air. The 500-foot radius is fine, but drive down 95 and take a look at the signs in Sharon. Those signs are visible from a lot more than 500 feet away. People on Elm Street, if you're going to teach your kids about astronomy, imagine going out at night and saying, there's the North Star, there's the Big Dipper, and there's the star for the cannabis shop. Now, do we need more advertising in life? You know, it sounds good, $1 million over 20 years. The town budget is $80 million per year. So in the 20 years we're talking about, think how insignificant that $1 million is compared to the total amount of money this town receives every year. I don't know how to say it in any ways. You get one chance to destroy a view. You get one chance to destroy the sides of roads. Route 1's gone, you know, probably because there was an act passed 1965 when Lyndon Johnson was president to try and preserve the sides of federal highways. And for years, that's helped, but it seems to be chipping away now. I'm not sure why. I'm sure Mr. Spillane and Mr. Burr know why. And Route 1 isn't a federal highway, so you see what happens. If you drive down Route 1, there's more electronic billboards than you'd ever care to see in a day. And they will try to sell you any product under the sun. And that's what will happen on these. I said it at the December 6th meeting in front of the Selectmen. We've got pot shops up there. We've got all the casinos that advertise up there. And now Massachusetts is going to have online sports betting. So you'll probably be driving down 95, or if you're in the right part of town, you're going to see tote boards up there telling you what the odds are on the upcoming games. I don't endorse these. I think it's something the town should steer clear of, and I just ask you to think about it Monday night. And Frank, I know you were going to get me some information. You told me December 6th. You're going to send me the info. You remember?
Yep,
But I haven't received it yet.
okay. Steve has it, we can give it to you after the fact.
I'll get it to you. I've got to call into the digital company.
Okay. I didn't know if you lost my address. I remember you said that night you had the address.
Yep, I do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Jack?
I guess this is a question for Frank. I'm not sure where these changes fit in the town bylaws, but when you reduce the proposal to this level, are you leaving yourself open to criticism related to spot zoning? Or is that even relevant? Is this part of the zoning area? And if it is, then you might have a spot zoning question.
It's a good question. First, the sign bylaw is not under zoning.
Okay, that answers it, I guess.
So that's part of it, but still you want to think about it. I don't think it is, because it's a big enough area within which to put different billboards in there. But also it's a reflection of the last town meeting, of what we heard at that town meeting about Elm Street, that the town wanted to limit it even more. So I don't think it'll be an issue, because it's not in zoning, but also because it's a response to what we heard from the town at the annual. And again, they can say yes or no to this Monday night also. So I don't believe so. It was a consideration when we looked at it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, if it doesn't fall into the zoning category, then it's a non-issue. But as I listened to it, that sort of hit me.
Yep. But again, it's limited for two reasons from the past one. Again, one, distance from residents. And if we just left it at that, the area would have been even larger. But the state has its own rules and regulations that you have to meet, and that's that two businesses, I'm gonna say, have to be within 500 feet of the location. So we just added that to the bylaw, which limited the area again. Just like for the annual, we inserted the state's restrictions on how far a billboard has to be from interchanges. That wasn't in the original write-up for the bylaw, but when we started talking with the Board of Appeals, the advisory committee, the community, people were concerned about that. We told them, no billboards can go in there because of the state regulations, so we added it to the bylaw anyway. So even though some of it's restrictions, some of it's just restrictions from the state, so I'm not concerned about that. One of the things with regard to billboards in the town, a number of the billboards out on Route 1 were grandfathered because they were there, decades ago, probably in the 50s. And they were all static back in the day. And then electronic billboards came into effect. And the one that's located by the McDonald's, it's not on the property, it's on the adjoining property, was the first electronic billboard in the state under a pilot program. and we had to go into front of the Board of Appeals with the applicant to get their approval. And it was a number of meetings showing the effect and all that. And there was a requirement by the state and the Board of Appeals that after a year up, they had to do another study with regard to traffic to see if there was any negative effect for it. Not only for that site, because if there was a negative effect at that site, they could force it to be removed, go back to a static, but also to see whether they wanted to allow electronic billboards throughout the state. And there was no indication that there was any more accidents at that location or through the state, so the state allowed it to continue to go through the state. The town, however, eventually decided that they didn't want any more billboards on Route 1 and disallowed billboards in Foxborough. And then they changed that so that they would allow static billboards only on Route 1. And a number of new billboards came in. And then they relooked at it again and decided, yes, we will allow electronic billboards. And each time, those were votes by the town at town meeting to allow billboards along Route 1. So the town at one point did not allow any new billboards. There were a number of them out there that were grandfathered, including the electronic one by McDonald's. But over time, the town started to allow them. And we feel this is just, a progression towards that, and it gives additional revenue to the town, because any electronic billboards requires a mitigation agreement with the town, which gives additional revenue. And if you look up and down 95 and other places, they are coming in. And yes, on the highway, you can see those billboards from a distance. But when you're on the ground, you can't see them from the same distance, because they're really built to be seen on the highway and not to be seen anywhere else. So, you have anything else?
Just briefly, thank you, Mr. Spillane. Just a couple of comments. I did hear the $1 million over 20 years is not a lot of money with the town with an $80 million budget. I've heard that type of argument in the past. It's a good one, except for the fact that this is $1 million worth of discretionary funds, and discretionary funds on an $80 million budget are a lot lower. By the time you get done with paying cost of living increases in a Prop 2.5 override environment, $80 million usually is earmarked fairly well. So there is a difference in my mind with $1 million in discretionary funds. Second, I think somebody on the advisory committee, I know exactly who it was, but he's not here, so I'm not going to quote him by name, mentioned the highway system, this interstate highway system. There are a number of billboards between Route 128 all the way to Providence. There will be more that actually come in. When you're out on the highway, a lot of times you don't even know which community that you're in. It's not uncommon to enter Walpole, then enter Sharon, then Foxborough, then Walpole again. The interstate highway system's a lot like the train system, meaning these signs, this is a part of like our life. They're actually out on the highway. So I don't think it hurts the, again, I'm from Canton, so we've put up a number of them there. We haven't had a, I was on the Board of Selectmen there too for 13 years. Never had a complaint what they were doing aesthetically, or even a complaint on the content. And I asked the Foxborough Board of Selectmen, even on the cannabis signs on Route 1 at that meeting, and they had not, my information is they haven't either. So I think it's really important, 2 points, that this is discretionary income, which in certain towns is even earmarked directly to the Board of Selectmen. They can fund certain shortcomings such as sidewalks, some of the ideas that you heard, but also this is part of the interstate system. It's not in downtown Foxborough or a place that you would go for like a nature walk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Steve, you all set? You good?
All set, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Well, you guys are good. We're going to end up, we're almost right on time here, so you must have planned this out a little bit, so, okay. Well, I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon. Hopefully this was helpful to the folks that are listening in today, and maybe it'll cut down on some of the questions we may have on Monday night. But certainly, if anybody does, or even want to ask the same question at the town meeting, they can certainly do that. But at least you have some background information about what the right answer will be. All right? Thank you all very much, and thanks for joining us. Bye now.